We understand that Islam is a comprehensive religion. It is a complete way of life. It is not a secular religion where we separate that from political or social, any aspect of life. And in it, of course, is a financial. And we say that the alms, the zakah, covers that portion, which the rich pays for the poor. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a sustenance. And it's more of a ni'mah and a niqmah. It's a test. It's a fitna for us to be tested, for the rich and the poor. How does it work? It's simply Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a sustenance to whomever we wish. And the wisdom, infinite wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them to that person. The money of the poor is within the money of the rich. So we pay 2.5% of whatever is left over after a year. مَا حَالَ عَلَيْهِ الْحَوْلِ فَعَلَيْهِ رُبْعُ الْعُشْرِ. After a year, there's 2.5% of what you have over, meaning that is now extravagant if you do spend it. And approximately $2,000 in Canadian currency, not American, Canadian now, because it's a different exchange rate. Now we're talking about the $2,000. If you have $2,000 in the bank for one full year that you did not touch, you pay 2.5% of that. And we know for sure there is a lot of people say that there's two things for sure, death and taxes. We try to, some of us try to get away with certain taxes, but in Islam we say we don't try to get away with it because it's an obligation. You see? So for us to say that anybody tries to get away with it, will be held accountable on Judgment Day. It's not the government that's trying to tell you, okay, well, you try to get away with certain things. No, we know that. So it's part of our system. But we say if every rich Muslim gave the zakah to the poor Muslim, there will be not one poor Muslim on the face of the earth. But since we're not talking about politics, we'll move on, inshallah. Now, the zakah in itself is a test, as we mentioned before. How does it work? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the wealth to the rich man, and he said, well, I don't want to give, this is too much money. Because he's a rich man, or a woman, of course, they're both. That they're obligatory, of course, upon men and women. As you will see, the acts of worship is obligatory for men and women in equal, with the exception of few, if we have the chance to talk about it. So if the rich man says now, well, half of, the 2.5% of this is given and it's too much money, it now becomes a fitna, a test for the rich man. And there's a story, of course, that is mentioned in the Quran, that there was a man that asked Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant me from his wealth, his sustenance. So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, قَلِيلٌ يُكْفِيكَ خَيْرٌ مِنْ كَثِيرٌ يُضْغِيكَ. Little that would be suffice, will be sufficient for you, is better than abundance that will veil your vision from the truth. So he repeated the same request. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ repeated the same answer and reply. After 3 times, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ noticed that he's insistent. So he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him his wealth. So Allah showered him with his wealth, the abundance, the sustenance, rizq. And now that man, he had to move outside of Medina because he had so much cattle and sheep and so on. So at the time of zakah, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told the Sahaba to go collect zakah from this man. They couldn't believe it. He was known to be a poor Sahaba, but of course a Sahaba rich in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean in the materialistic world, in the worldly possession, not in the spiritual aspect of it. So the man said, okay, for every 10 camels, there's 1 camel for, and so on. So when he had the zakah portion of his wealth on the side, shaitan came, Satan, the rejected, came and he whispered. He said, this is too much. He says, you're right, it's too much. Half of that is sufficient. He goes, you're right, half of that is sufficient. So he took half out. And then the half, he looked at it, he says, again, my God, this is too much. He says, half of the half is better. So half of the half was given. And all of a sudden, the archangel Gabriel alayhi salam is now revealing what is going on, revealing the message or the video transmission by satellite, as if, we're not saying it was, as if, inshallah. We get the phone call, said, Shaykh Alaa said he was watching satellites, as if, we're just saying as if, inshallah. That he's seen the picture, he says now he sends a message to say, do not accept zakah from this man. Because he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the meaning of the parable, of the verse interpretation, those who asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant them for sustenance, and they promised to give if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants, and then when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him from his sustenance, تَوَلَّوْا وَهُمْ عُرْضُونَ, meaning tawalla, same meaning, turned and turned, but he says with his body and his heart. So, فَأَعْقَبَهُمْ. What happened is hypocrisy till judgment day and so on. So when the man knew that the verses were revealed in his honor, he tried to come back. Oh, please take my zakah, take my zakah. He didn't accept it. Prophet ﷺ till he died, alayhi salatu wasalam. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu warda also did not accept it from him. And Umar ibn Khattab, that man died in his age. So we understand what kind of fitna it could be, because it's a blessing from Allah, and if we do not be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give the rights from the zakah, it will turn against you. And the poor person now, if he sees the rich man, he says, oh, I want to be like that rich man. So what does he do? Does he steal, take bribe, or do anything that's unlawful sources? Remind you of the righteous sahabiyya, the companion, female companion, may Allah be pleased with all of them. Ameen. She said, اتق الله فينا نحن نصبر على حر الجوع ولا نصبر على حر جهنم. Fear Allah, be pious, be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in us. We can withstand the heat of hunger, but we cannot withstand the heat of hellfire, wal-'iyadhu billah. So she's looking for the lawful sources. So whisper to my sister's ears, inshallah, don't push to get that Mercedes, to get the fur coat, to get all that gold and all that stuff, the diamond. So the brother now has to go, okay, well, I have to please her to go buy and bribe and steal and all that stuff. No, and I know the brother, inshallah, will please Allah, not the sisters, inshallah. And no contentment, ukhti, inshallah. So now this is what happened, okay, ukhti and akhi. This is basically the idea behind zakah. It is a sustenance for all, given within the realm of the rich people to be given to the poor. There's so much more to share with you, but inshallah we'll talk about it some other time if God Almighty blessed us with. Alms, zakah. Alms, zakah, purifies and increases our wealth. Zakah is the financial aspect of the comprehensive religion of Islam. Zakah is a test for the poor and the rich alike. 2.5% from the rich is given to the poor. Zakah acts as a purification mechanism for the heart and soul from misery and greed.